a business titan and a hugely influential politician.
We will fight, we will not back down, and we will win. We will win. Thank you.
He's popular in the Czech Republic and has made waves internationally. He's a former Minister of Finance and Prime Minister. He ran for the Czech presidency in 2023. He's a Slovak and a Eurosceptic.
Andrej Babiš jest głównym...
Andrej Babiš is the main point of reference in Czech politics. You can split the parties there into those who want to form a coalition with him and those in the anti-Babiš alliance. And people have started to ask whether the Czech Republic might be about to become pro-Russian.
Určitě ne, já chci mír, nechci válku. A v žádném případě bych neposílal.
Babiš jest politykiem, który...
Babiš is a highly controversial politician. Some call him a thoroughbred oligarch.
So who is he really? In this film, we'll be discussing the next Czech Prime Minister with Krzysztof Dębiec.
Andrej Babiš urodził się w Bratysławie.
Andrej Babiš was born in Bratislava. That's now obviously the capital of Slovakia, but in 1954 it was just another city in Czechoslovakia. We could say he was born into a nomenclatura family. His father, Stefan Babiš, whose ancestors hailed from the west and northwest of Slovakia, first worked in business, in foreign trade, and was sent abroad to represent the country. He was later a diplomatic representative on economic issues at the Czech representation in Geneva. This meant that Babiš himself enjoyed some protection. He had a good life. He spent a few years, first in Paris, where he started primary school, and then he started middle school in Switzerland, in Geneva.
He finished one of the best schools in Bratislava and then the University of Economics.
Tu też jedna z pierwszych takich analogii.
And now we have one of the first similarities with Trump, who the Czech oligarch likes to compare himself to. Andrej Babiš didn't do his military service. He spent a year in hospital suffering from thrombocytopenia, but he missed his mandatory military service and immediately started to work in a foreign trade company, Chemapol, which later became Petrimex.
This launched Andrej Babiš's business career. The company traded chemicals. Babiš would be dealing with fertilizers. In the 1980s, Babiš was a member of the Communist Party of Czechoslovakia.
Jako przedstawiciel kilkunastu spółek w roku...
In 1985, he was sent to Rabat, the capital of Morocco, as the representative of a dozen or so companies. Morocco is a powerhouse in terms of the production of phosphorites. There are plenty of signs that Babiš traveled to Morocco already in the role of a secret agent of the intelligence service STB, since it's believed that they signed the appropriate documents with him in 1982. Babiš still denies the contents of those archives, which are today kept in Slovakia. But the press has had access to statements of Babiš's former colleagues, former STB officials and historians, and they claim that it's highly unlikely that this didn't happen. And at the beginning of his political career, when it started to look like he could become a major politician, he gave an interview on the Jan Krause show. When the host asked him about these accusations, he didn't deny he'd collaborated with the STB. He only said that it wasn't that bad STB, it was the economic STB, which was defending the interests of Czechoslovakia. And he only had to sign forms because he was meeting foreigners.
A ta STB ekonomická.
In 1991, Babiš returned to Czechoslovakia from Morocco. The situation in Europe was very tense then. The breakup of Czechoslovakia was looking increasingly probable. Andrej Babiš convinced the management of Petrimex, where he was working, to open an office on the Czech side in Prague.
Z tego biura powstała osobna spółka Agrofert.
Already in 1993, a separate company, Agrofert, emerged from this office. At first it was 100% owned by Petrimex, but Babiš was the boss and also a manager in Petrimex. He had a crucial influence on how both companies were run. It's worth spending a moment to describe the Agrofert colossus. Babiš started from trading, from selling the minerals needed in fertilizer production, but he later went further and took over the whole added value chain in the agri-food industry. At present, his company both supplies seeds and sells fertilizers and pesticides, and they also hire out machines and buy harvests. They use the grains to make bread, and his Kosteleckie Uzeniny is the biggest meat processor in the Czech Republic. He's also active in forestry. Through the Hartenberg Fund, he has started to invest, for example, in Poland. Around 36% of the revenue is generated in the Czech Republic, but also 20% in Germany, where there's the Leeken bakeries, for example. If you visit a McDonald's in Germany, it's incredibly likely that the hamburger bun has been supplied by Babiš's company. It's the biggest agri-food corporation in the Czech Republic and Slovakia. It's the second biggest chemicals corporation after Orlen's Unipetrol. It's the second largest Czech motor exporter after Skoda Auto. And it's Europe's second biggest producer of nitrogen-based fertilizers.
In 1994, Andrej Babiš changed the status of his company from a private limited company to a joint stock company. Only a year later, he launched a bold takeover of Agrofert. The share capital was increased thanks to a mysterious company registered in Switzerland called OFI. Investigative journalists later pointed out that it was Babiš who was behind the company. The takeover of Lovochemie, a fertilizer producer, was also a crucial moment in his business career, and it soon became a foundation of Babiš's chemical empire.
On zawarł najpierw taki sojusz z państwową spółką.
He first formed an alliance with state-run Unipetrol, which also happened to be a supplier for Lovochemie. At first, he lost the rivalry in the privatization process, but later on he took advantage of a pre-agreed contract, which was favorable for him, to back the new owner of Lovochemie into a corner, de facto forcing him to sell the company, to sell his majority stake in the company, to Babiš. This company was saddled with huge debt, £500 million, but he then repeated a maneuver known from the acquisition of Agrofert. He increased the company's share capital, but he made sure this only happened in the company with no debts. This one received majority shares, and the company which had previously had majority shares in Lovochemie became a minority shareholder, and it now also had huge debts. So this company was driven to collapse.
Babiš's experience in foreign trade meant he understood the importance of support and access to information. He quickly built up a network of support among the political elite, mainly the Social Democrats, and he maintained contact with Stanisław Gross, who later became Minister of the Interior and then Prime Minister.
Według czeskich dziennikarzy śledczych spółki powiązane z Babišem.
Czech investigative journalists reported that in 1997, a year before the Social Democrats won the election, companies linked to Babiš via his companies in Panama transferred an eye-watering amount of money precisely to the Social Democrats. This put Babiš in pole position when, in 1998, there was a change in the Chamber of Deputies, and also in the staff of the National Treasury.
Babiš has said that he entered politics in May 2010, when President Václav Klaus vetoed an amendment to a bill on clean air, which would have increased the share of biocomponents in fuel. Babiš had lobbied for that bill for half a year. He then claimed that people close to the president had demanded bribes from him in the business context. The future of a costly investment was at stake. Rapeseed processing plants in Lovosice, in the northwest of the Czech Republic. Their construction had cost around 65 million euros. It was more poignant since he'd known Klaus since the 90s and played tennis with him regularly. The parliamentary elections were approaching, and it turned out that the presidential veto couldn't be rejected within the constitutional period. But on request from the Social Democrats, deputies paused the final session of parliament, which was a precedent a day before the election. There was an independent vote, which did reject the president's veto on biofuels, in spite of the previous procedural limitations. In the fall of 2011, Andrej Babiš established the Action of Dissatisfied Citizens Association, ANO in short, which in 2012 morphed into an anti-establishment political movement.
pierwszym swoim podejściu zaliczył swoisty falstart. Chodzi o wybory.
His first venture was a kind of false start. There was a by-election to the Czech Senate. Every 2 years, 1/3 of the members of the upper house are elected, and here none of the candidates he put forward made it through to the runoff. But his first election to the Chamber of Deputies went differently, and this is more important in the Czech system.
Wyborami czeskiego cyklu politycznego.
The events of June 2013 shook the Czech political scene. The police arrested associates of Prime Minister Petr Nečas. There was a huge scandal which ended the government. The country was mired in chaos and disappointment with the elite.
Krótko po tym, w zasadzie tydzień po tym, 24 czerwca...
Just a week later, the 24th of June, Babiš published a very mysterious tweet, which has entered Twitter history. Zítra asi něco koupím, meaning, I'll probably buy something tomorrow. He apologized for the delay because it was 2 days later, but he did follow through. He acquired one of the most powerful media houses in the Czech Republic. From the traditional titles, it includes the daily Mladá Fronta Dnes, with its established position of influential dailies, and Lidové noviny, the iDnes news website, a powerful tool of influence. Some journalists, such as Jaroslav Kmenta, one of the old guard of Czech investigative journalism, he called it the September the 11th of Czech journalism, because a new chapter was starting. Many journalists left Babiš's media outlets and started completely new business projects, independent, financed by subscribers. On the other hand, other leading businessmen started entering the media. Some of them said openly that they were buying their insurance policies. And it was also called September the 11th because every Czech journalist would remember where they were when they found out about it, and this had an influence on them.
In July 2013, ANO's support was around 2% and starting to grow. It came second in the election and entered the government. Babiš became Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister. It was a fairly successful government, but there were controversies.
Rok 2016 Czechy skończyły...
In 2016, the Czech Republic finished the year with its biggest budget surplus in history. But there were accusations that the Treasury administration was exploiting its activity to keep a more careful eye on Andrej Babiš's business competitors. FAU Přerov is a well-known case. Actions of the Treasury led to it collapsing. At the end of the term, support for Babiš was growing, but support for the Social Democrats was falling, though they were the biggest party in the coalition. And the Social Democrats started to talk a lot about Babiš's conflicts of interest. So he signed over the majority of his fortune to 2 trust funds, though in practice he still had control over them. But he had de facto deflected the accusations of a conflict of interests while maintaining the crucial rights over how his firms operated. He has also already sold his shares in media companies. However, these outlets remain favorable to him, as they are now controlled by a businessman from the chemical sector who has also acquired related assets from Agrofert. And in 2017, he won a convincing victory in the election.
His alliance with President Zeman meant he could rule in a minority government as leader of ANO. Later, he formed a coalition with the Social Democrats. In the first years, he fixed the tax system. His flagship project was digitized revenue records. During the pandemic, he lowered labor tax, but also increased salaries for teachers and increased pensions and benefits for children.
Babiš, który prezentuje się jako sprawny menedżer i jako taki jest doceniany.
On the other hand, Babiš presents himself as a competent manager. His voters appreciate him for that, and not because they think he's squeaky clean. It's because he's successful and is viewed as a competent manager, but he failed to make breakthroughs in either the stagnating process of developing express roads, or in developing atomic energy, or in modernizing the armed forces. It was the current centre-right government of Petr Fiala which delivered these 3 things. In foreign policy, we can talk about the tensions caused with the unprecedented numbers of Russian diplomats who were expelled in connection with the Russian trace in the ammunition explosions in Vrbětice in Moravia. On the other hand, he's equivocal on China. Unlike the Social Democrats and President Zeman, Babiš was never a supporter of opening up a lot to Chinese investments. He didn't harbour much hope there, and he himself had unsuccessfully attempted to enter the Chinese market. And we can't forget his strong cooperation within the Visegrad Group. For example, in migration issues, the fight against dual-quality products in the European Union, and there was the conflict over the Turów brown coal mine in 2021, which led to the biggest Polish-Czech crisis in the 21st century. Why is Babiš so full of paradoxes? There's an infinite number of Babišes. It's typical for him to do an about-turn in politics in a very short time if the situation calls for that. For example, he once said he'd never enter politics. He said he wouldn't run for president, but he did in 2023 and got through to the runoff with a pretty good result, though he did lose to retired Army General Petr Pavel. His party also changed its ideological profile. It started as one fighting corruption in Czech politics, an anti-corruption party which supported business and called for a reduced tax burden for business. This meant it was able to attract some individuals from the dissident scene who had fought against the communist regime, though in most cases this alliance ended. Babiš changed his main activity and started to support pro-social ideas. This made it possible to remove the Social Democrats, the communists, from the Czech political scene. In 2021 they left parliament. There's a question mark over whether they'll return to him, but it's clear that Babiš took a large part of their electorate. And in his latest incarnation he's a Trumpist, a sovereigntist. Babiš himself liked to pose in a MAGA-style hat, only his said Silné Česko, a strong Czech Republic. When Trump was very popular, Babiš said he was a Trumpist, that ANO and the Trump-led Republican Party have almost identical policies. He raised several sovereigntist slogans. But when it turned out that Trump would also be applying very high tariffs on the European Union, and that Czech firms would also suffer because of that, since they export many components for cars exported from Germany to the US, at that point, Babiš did another about-turn and said that Trump had lost his mind, that he didn't know what he was doing, and that the only thing that links him to Trump is the red hat, and he's held on to that. So he shows a certain world, and he's the symbol of certain changes which have occurred when it comes to profiling the ANO party, which is sometimes referred to as the political wing of Agrofert. He's changed his political family too. He'd previously belonged to the European liberals. He was proud of knowing Emmanuel Macron, but probably influenced by Viktor Orbán, he moved his grouping to the Patriots for Europe, where it remains today.
Now, there's a huge chance that Babiš will either become prime minister or that he'll be ruling from the back seat.
Nie wiemy oczywiście, czy będzie w stanie sformować...
We don't know if he'll be able to form a government independently. Most likely he won't, but it's easy to imagine a situation where no government can be formed without Babiš. In the most extreme scenario, I can imagine that Babiš will agree to control the government from the back seat if it would be unacceptable in some kind of coalition with the chosen parties of the centre-right. But he will definitely be the first, second and third choice for Prime Minister. As for foreign policy, we should certainly expect an improvement in relations with Slovakia, which are currently very tense. People say they're the worst since at least 1998, when Vladimír Mečiar, who had authoritarian tendencies, was removed from power. There will also probably be closer relations in the region, though without Poland. But there's still a question mark around Hungary. The elections are coming, and his political ally Viktor Orbán, to put it mildly, is not among the favourites. When it comes to international policy, the Czech Republic will no longer be at the forefront of supporting Ukraine. More than once, Babiš criticised the ammunition initiatives which the Fiala government promoted as a flagship. Inside the country, we should expect a loosening of budget constraints, an increase in social spending. And Babiš has also suggested that he will go after the public media. The Czech media is a bastion of autonomy from politics, but there's no guarantee this will last forever. Babiš may remove the television license fee to achieve this. He's spoken about it already. And then they would be financed from the state budget. It will be like it was not so long ago in Slovakia. And this will certainly make it easy to set the tone for the state media.
agendzie mediów publicznych.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, take a look at our other stories on screen now. And don't forget to subscribe.